Hello, you wonderful people. So in case you don't know, I'm a big fan of romance. I'm a sucker for a good love story. And I want to say sometime last week, there was a YouTube community poll. I want to say it was on like the Nick Rewind, the Nickelodeon Rewind YouTube channel, but it was basically like, when it comes to Ned Declassified School Survival Guide, which couple did you like prefer? Was it Ned and Susie or Ned and Mose? And I ended up saying Ned and Mose, which I'll kind of explain that a little more later on. But I gave my answer there, but I thought like, oh, I'd rather kind of like expand upon that into a larger conversation, and that's where this video idea came from. But really quickly, when it comes to Ned and Mose, well, Ned and Mose is actually my preferred couple because it fits into a romance storyline that I'm a big fan of, and that is friends, you know, going from like friends slash best friends to dating. I think is such an interesting story because the Susie and Ned situation is so interesting because it is that storyline of like, right, the person that you go after the entire time. Like Ned and Susie like finally did get together at one point in time, but it was actually him and Mose that ended up together in the end. I think that's always that interesting storyline in romances where it's like, oh, this is the person you've been pining after the entire time, and then it just ends up being kind of an unexpected turn for you when you end up dating one of your best friends. I mean, this isn't something just unique to Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There's plenty of romance, rom-com movies that are kind of based around like, oh, you're going after this person, but you end up with this person. Like that's, you know, but it's just Ned's Declassified falls under that category of that storytelling device on a romantic game. But like I said, I'm a big fan of like, you know, people who are friends becoming a couple. The example I always think about is like Sky High, you know, the whole element of, oh, my girlfriend became my arch nemesis, my arch enemy became my best friend became my girlfriend. Another example I think about is Stefan and Caroline in The Vampire Diaries, specifically the TV show, because I've never read the book, so I don't know if this situation plays out exactly the same, but that was like a friendship turned into a romantic situation, obviously, and that obviously came with its little complications as the series progressed. I guess truth be told is that, you know, these best friends ending up together in a romantic sense, it's the same thing as kind of my other, I guess it kind of gets grouped in with the relationships you don't expect. So Ned and Mose getting together wasn't something I ever expected would happen, but some other examples I think of is like Teen Wolf. Like a lot of those final pairings I wasn't expecting. Like obviously like Styles always had a thing for Lydia, but for them to kind of end up, especially where their relationship situations were prior, like she was with Parrish for a little while, she was with Jackson at one point, then like eventually Parrish. Scott's kind of in the same department. I mean, obviously the whole situation with like him and Allison was kind of like they eventually got together, but that didn't work, or you know, then him and Kira, but that had its complicated ending. But the one that kind of shocked me the most was Scott and Malia ending up together. I was like, oh, that was interesting, especially considering her and Styles were previously there. So that one in particular threw me for a loop. The one I think about the most of unexpected relationships is in the show Grimm. Spoilers, but Nick and Adeline ended up together. Would have never guessed that, considering like, right, you hated her and she kind of ruined your life. Everything between you and Juliet was kind of on the like basis of like everything falling out because of her treachery and manipulation, but then becoming a couple, and actually a really sweet and cute couple, to the point that I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting this, and I was actually rooting for it, and they end up being an end game because they end up together. In fact, I actually was kind of worried in the final season. I was like, I hope we don't do something where we take this back, where it's like, oh yeah, like Juliet and Nick get back together, because I was sad, because I was like, actually like Nick and Adeline together, which is extra ironic considering that David Guntoli, who is Nick, and Elizabeth Tulloch, who is Juliet, are together in real life, so it's just kind of extra funny when you actually think about it. I'm also a big fan of what is the antithesis of romance in a lot of stories. Obviously you see it the most, I mean, sure, it pops up in movies, but it definitely comes up the most in TV shows, of the will they, won't they. Probably the top of my will they, won't they list is probably Lucifer and Chloe in the show Lucifer. It's just kind of like, yeah, he's obviously into her, she's kind of into him, but he's kind of the playboy, and he's kind of scared and reluctant in so many regards. They are the antithesis of, hey, will they, won't they, and obviously, spoilers, they do eventually get together, which is just a beautiful, once again, a relationship that definitely has its struggles and its hurdles that they have to get through. I mean, I guess a lot of Riverdale kind of falls into that category too, because it's like, well, you set up the whole Archie and Betty, and then like Archie and Veronica are dating for most of this series, or a good chunk of the series, and then it's like the biggest question being like, well, who will he end up with? Obviously the series finale gave us that answer. Yeah, that's a big will they won't they type of situation. I mean, once again, that comes with even more complications because of the whole, well, you know, like I said, Archie was dating Veronica and Betty was dating Jughead for like a good chunk of the show. So, but then I also am a big fan of the whole storylines of, these characters are just meant to be. Like, I think, you know, it's destiny and everything. Like, a great example would be like the show Once Upon a Time, Snow White, and Prince Charming. Especially when you think about like that love story, what ended up sprouting from that love story. So it's easy to be like, yeah, that's kind of it was always meant to be type of situation. Kind of in that same vein, Superman and Lois being together, well, Clark Kent and Lois just being meant to be, that it almost makes you kind of feel bad for any other relationship. Like, anytime like Clark was with Lana throughout Smallville, I was like, oh, it sucks. But it's also because like, I'm like, I get that she's a person that you like, but who do you end up with? It's Lois, because it was just sadly meant to be type of situation. I mean, to be fair, like, I know that there have been more romantic love interests in Clark's life, but the ones I'm the most familiar with are Lana and Lois. But to me, Lois will always be endgame in that situation. It's like, no matter what's happening, Lois is always going to be the endgame unless it's one of those storylines where Lois is dead, so that's a whole thing. But that's probably one of my favorites, of like, oh, it was kind of meant to be that, and like Peter and MJ type of situation, which even that's like well, you know, there's been multiple love interests in that department, but to me it's like, once again, Clark and Lois Endgame, Peter and MJ in Endgame type of situation. So and even amongst those two couples, I have my favorite iteration of those characters. I really like the Superman and Lois adaptation of like that coupling, just because I love the actors who played them, and they work together so well, storyline wise and just like chemistry wise. I think they gel together so well. But like, you know, with the Spider-Man and MJ front, I've talked about this in the past too, is the MCU version of that coupling is probably my favorite, just because I really like those movies the most, and it's just, I like that interpretation of MJ and just how that flowed with their dynamic in their relationship, where they started off in Homecoming to where they ended up being in No Way Home. Obviously, you know how that plays out, sadly. These were only a few examples I was able to come up with. I'm sure there's a lot more I could think of if I took a little bit more time. But I mean, ultimately, I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Specifically going back to the beginning of this, kind of talking about the different romantic storylines, I'd love to get to know your favorite type of romance in stories. Is it like, oh, friends / best friends turn significant others, or oh, this was always meant to be relationships, or the most unexpected relationships? Like, let me know your thoughts about it. And some of the relationships I talked about in this video, which are some of your favorites? Which are some of your favorites? Leave it all in the comments down below, because I'd love to know. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good